thing when you look at it in terms of like picking a habit of getting something done, but then acquiring decent habits during the day. So obviously, all the little efforts that you make towards getting better within your training, is going to make everything else better. So for an example, if I said, say, improving your nutrition and improving a breakfast as an example is going to make a difference in terms of how you're going to adapt and adjust to the rest of your day. If you looked at the rest of your day in terms of food intake and how it's going to play around your training times, it's going to make everything else better. So if I said, okay, I'm going to eat so many calories before I train and so many calories after I train, but I need to make sure I get so many things in between. So many grams of protein, so many grams of carb, blah, da, 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 da. So this is going to play into I'm mixing up all my words. Are you setting yourself up for failure, or are you setting yourself up to actually succeed? Because everyone can figure out when they want to eat food, but then it's a matter of understanding when you require the food. Because I think I put this on a post the other day where you can always say you're in a deficit and be struggling to have food, but it's like, when do you physically need food? Like, I don't need food at 8 o'clock at night when I'm winding down, or I'm not exactly doing anything energy exertive. Whereas when I wake up first thing in the morning, I'm going to be needing a lot of food. So I now manipulate, because obviously my food is now getting pushed up. Morning, Lewis. How are we? My food is getting pushed up first thing in the morning, and I will actually have big, small as I go through the day, and then obviously have meal manipulations around when I train. So post-workout for me will be a heavy carb and protein base, so even protein oats and even a Pop-Tart at the minute for me. So obviously I've just had breakfast now after a walk this morning, and it was bagels and eggs. It's pretty standard that for me, and I will now stick myself in the routine of having a monster first thing in the morning. It's just how I am. But that's going back to the habit thing. If you set yourself into a position where you wake up and you know what you need to do and when you need to do it, it's going to be a lot easier to sort out other aspects of training and lifestyle. And I mean this in terms of, say, you need to get up and you need to leave the house by a certain time for work. That's a given. How can you set that same ruling up to your nutrition or your training, where saying, if I'm training today, I need to train by 10 o'clock. And if I need to train by 10 o'clock, I need to be out of the house by 9:30 to get to the gym. Obviously, right now, it's not anywhere. But can you set yourself into a position where you are allowing yourself to get to the gym for a certain time and being like, right, I have to leave the house by this time. Are you not prepared? No? Okay, you need to figure out how you're going to set yourself up for that timing and not screw yourself over, because I think I made this a thing with a client quite early on where I was saying, right, don't train in the afternoon or the evening, because basically what you're going to be doing is just spending the entire morning and like lunchtime period putting off training. So set yourself a time quite early on when you know you have to be at the gym. Once you're at the gym, you're done, then you can get on with the rest of your day. This is kind of why I like to train quite early as well. I would much rather spend my time not sitting around waiting to train and putting off training, when I can get up, do the first thing, and then crack on with my day, especially when I've got clients back in. 9 times out of 10, my clients before was like pre-lunch time, because for me I just prefer morning training, but I can then be training about 11 o'clock, or if I went for the early run, even 6 a.m. Obviously that's dependent on your gym, but at Apex opens at 6, which is perfect, and then weekends is a bit different. But the way now my training's set up, I'm allowed to be in and out quite quick, which I feel like a lot of people neglect in terms of like saying, oh yeah, more volume is better, when realistically it's not. Like, are you setting yourself up to know what you're doing for a session? That's a major one for me. It's like, are you going into the gym and be like, oh, I'm doing a bit of this, I'm doing a bit of that, is it going to be making sense to you? Like, you need to be setting it up and priming yourself to get in the best position possible. So, like, now I'll show you an example. Get a behind the scenes of how I work. So, all my programming, obviously this is my pre-programming for post-COVID. So I will set this up into a rotation period, a 12-week cycle, not of drugs. But this is the start of my program, and I'm looking at literally like 5 or 6 exercises. Whereas before, obviously, if you don't plan it out, you don't know how you're progressing. And this is where I was before. So I could literally see how I was making progressions over time and how I was moving forward. But then I'd literally know exactly what I was going into the session to do, and I'd cue it up exactly. If I looked into sort of exercise selection, for me, that, I mean, I could go on and on with lives about this, but just an example there. So that was quite a hamstring orientated day. Obviously with hamstring curl, RDL and Nordics. I probably wouldn't need to put 3 in now, to be fair, because I've actually now sort of condensed my training to not need it. But I can have a hamstring focused day there. And then down here is a quads and glutes alternative, which for me is perfect. Obviously, when I can have leg press in, I can then cue it and see how I'm doing over time. With the other two, obviously this was when I was back doing an upper-lower split, so it was a bit easier to cue up. But I think the idea of a bro split for me is dead, unless you need to bring up a lagging body part, obviously bodybuilding kind of aspects. But for me, if you're working on performance and you're working on improvement, I think an upper-lower split in terms of getting higher frequency and a lower volume and allowing that intensity to get pushed up, there's no better. For me anyway. Obviously this will be dependent on other people and how they can actually recover, and that'll come into, like, say, your sleep, your nutrition, and how much you're actually physically training. So I can literally say, okay, back to the screen. I have all my information, and like sometimes I was doing a rotation of 2, I think down below a little bit more. I literally started the new cycle down here before fucking COVID hit. So I literally got 2 sessions in on a new session plan, and then it stopped, which is great. So it's big on me focusing on where I am with numbers and how I'm progressing over time. So obviously I can see a stack times 10 there on a adductors, and then come 2 sessions time I was on a stack 12 and a stack 13, so I got +3 stack numbers. So you can always see where you are in terms of progressions. Obviously, you can also measure where you are in terms of sessions. So like what sometimes I do is at the bottom I can see feedback. I would physically write down how my session was on that day. A lot of the time I would forget to do it anyway. But this basically just allows you to write down how you're feeling for a particular day. And if I'm not analysing where I am in terms of like mentality, performance, like nutrition, sleep, I can't pinpoint where the issues are. And if I can say like, oh, I was stressed that day, oh, I had a crap night's sleep, I can figure out where the issue is and be like, oh, it was just a bad session within it all. However, if I don't, and then it keeps occurring over time, this could be where you might be able to come in and say, oh, I need a deload. So I would look back on previous sessions. Obviously, it's not going to be, hey, Warzone chat's gone live. For anyone that doesn't pay attention, Warzone update has happened, and apparently 200 people are dropping in per game, which is just going to be freaking madness. It's already bad enough for 150. But anyway, yeah, So this is an important factor for me to be able to see if it's just a blip within my system, or is my sleep and everything else playing a part, or do I actually need a deload, or is something needing to be changed? Obviously, over time, this is going to vary. If you're in a deficit over a long period of time, numbers progressively may drop off. Generally, just body weight has gone down, so overall, power to weight distribution is probably changed. So that's one factor you need to also consider. Can you see the information where your weight is listed? So obviously, for me right now, I wasn't doing it at this point, but I think I am doing it now. Let's see if I can actually access it. I mean, no one's actually watching this, so it'll be a video. So I basically just track everything for me, for my own coaching sheets anyway. I need to fill out yesterday's. But this basically just allows me to see fluctuations in my own weight. So this is a 3 pound fluctuation in weight, and this is where I progressively started pushing up calorie numbers. So I can write it down there. I can see what I've set myself and my protein and carb targets. But then I also measure out my sleep and my sleep stress and how much sleep I got. Steps and training. So obviously, are you getting the expenditure in that is required for weight loss? Like, if you work in an office, are you doing 2,000 steps a day? I used to be like that, and I used to freaking hate it. Hate it. I know Lewis was just watching this. I don't know if he's still here, but an office job for me just was not the one. I bloody hated it. I think the only thing that kept me there was the actual people. But if you can't keep a track on where your steps are and how much you're actually physically moving during the day without your training sessions, so I will even check when I'm actually training as well, so I can just analyse and see if there are any blips in weight distribution. So obviously, if I'm back it onto the sheet, I've got a 167 to a 171.6, and that's pounds. But obviously over that period, that's a very high increase. Let's see where I was. I had a very poor step day, and I had 3 rest days in a row. That can assist to the overall weight increase. Poor quality of sleep, weight increase. Just dead simple stuff like that. And it's like, if you don't know what to look for, you might be setting yourself up to fail. So I would physically, although it sounds meticulous, monitor and track everything that's going on. Stress level, quality of sleep, amount of sleep, because it will all play a part in terms of the main goal and any weight fluctuations that everyone's seems dead worried about, but it's a natural thing. Like, you can have a weight fluctuation from weighing yourself after eating too late the night before and your food not digesting. The food's going to sit on you, and you can have a fluctuation of 2 pounds. Oh my god. It doesn't make a difference, because if you ate 2 hours early and your digestion was full, digestion went through fully, and then you're going to be fine. So it's not sweating the small stuff and just cracking on that long-term goal. That's why the majority of the time, back to the sheet again, I'll put an average in. So I start with my average up top, 168.2. That was when I started about a week ago. But I averaged there, 169.6. Haven't weighed myself this morning because I couldn't get to the scale. And I've been for a walk already. But I've already had some food. But obviously, eating food is going to be a distribution, and obviously it's going to fluctuate your weight. So I would always recommend weighing yourself first thing in the morning without any food, obviously dependent on how late you eat the night before. I don't eat past 8, purely for the fact that I just don't think I need the food, and it just sits horribly when I try and sleep. So I'd rather give my body the best position to relax and get into a neutral state, if that makes sense. Like, homeostasis is the main factor within everything going on, and if you can't improve and make sure that everything's running smoothly, your body's going to think it's stressed, and then it's going to make its own actions without you to make you feel better. So obviously, fight or flight response. Is it going to, like, it's the simplest stuff. That's the weirdest thing. It's like, if you're not getting enough blood through the body in one beat in terms of your stroke volume, the body's going to respond. It's going to increase your heart rate to increase the amount of times the blood is physically pumped per minute. You can't change that, but you need to make sure that obviously, are you getting enough oxygenated blood? Are you getting enough oxygen? I'm sitting here blabbing on about oxygen, but I'm not getting a decent amount of oxygen. Like, I made a video yesterday discussing energy production and obviously ATP, which is the energy system for basically how the body makes energy from food and oxygen. So imagine food and oxygen go through all the systems, go through ATP production and Krebs cycle, and basically it comes out with water and carbon dioxide. The oxygen and the food obviously is going to be dependent, so if you have more food, energy production is going to be higher, and if you have more oxygen, energy production is going to be higher. And I'm saying that in terms of, without oxygen, you have 2 units of ATP production. If you had oxygen, it goes to 34 to 38. So that's 16 times. Yeah. No, it's not. Yeah, that's close. Yeah, close enough. But yeah, you can see my point where you can sit in a certain position and think you're providing the best for your body, but if you're not getting enough oxygen in and you're not getting the right amount of food and nutrients in, you might be restricting your body of getting the physical energy it needs to survive. And obviously this can go back to saying like, oh, I feel more energized when I work out. This is probably why. You're actually making physically more energy when you've had a higher oxygen intake, which is basically just helping you out anyway. So it's just helping yourself to make yourself more energized, which is the weirdest thing to say. I blabber on way too much and my mouth has gone dry. Yeah, anyone watching, if you've got any questions, just drop me a message. I will blabber on all day if I wanted to. So I'm going to try and avoid it. So yeah, I was saying before about energy production. So obviously, the level of physical oxygen you intake is going to be affecting how much physical energy is made through the ATP system. Sciencey stuff, adenosine triphosphate, for anyone that cares. But it's sitting here and listening to this and having the practical thinking and the practical knowledge to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So for me, what I would say is, if you're going into a session, get a bit of walk in, like outside, get a bit of cardio in first, get a bit of a warm up, get the oxygen pumping through the body, increase the blood flow, helping oxygen physically get to the muscle itself. Which, it sounds daft, but the physical oxygen level getting to the muscle, I think a lot of people neglect, and this is going to help because obviously blood flow, oxygen's going to go through the blood to get to the certain location. But in terms of something I read yesterday, it's talking into bloody hell, blood flow and oxygen supply causing increased time to muscle fatigue. Oxygen level is not the case, because obviously you'd think it'd be the energy system, but it actually isn't. It's actually down to the muscle itself releasing the calcium required for a muscle contraction. So obviously, no, I won't say obviously, this is really complex shit. Sarcoplasmic reticulum, for anyone that is still actually paying attention and not absolutely lost, is basically the muscle source, and basically when the brain gets a signal to be like, okay, I need to flex my arm and make a muscle contraction, it opens the gates and allows calcium in. So obviously the difference between a fast twitch fibre and a slow twitch fibre is the speed of which the calcium is released. So, and obviously this is going to play all in a part of how the oxygen gets to the muscle and makes that response. But if the oxygen can't get to the muscle efficiently, God, what is it? I think it's hyperoxia, which is a reduced O2 supply to the muscle. It's hypoxia and hyperoxia. So it's one of the two for increased and decreased. I did have... Oh, where is it? No, I've lost it. I was looking at oxygen supply to the muscle. I am blabbing on, so if someone wants to ask me a question, please bloody do. Because I will be here all day talking my sciencey bullshit. But yeah, it's important to realise that oxygen supply isn't just as necessary for the lungs and making sure you're breathing correctly, it's also good for supplying the muscle and helping with physical muscle contractions, but not for energy production, for the actual physical contraction of the muscle from the Ca+2, which is the calcium ions, which will go from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Jesus. And this is why I sit in my room all day reading random shit.